Welcome to Jurassic Park.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Why don't we just wait here for a little while?
Do you want to know what it is?
There's no knowing where you might be swept off to.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
Shepherds we shall be, for thee, my life, for thee.
I don't know. I'm making this up as I go.
There's a special rug in hell reserved for people who waste good scotch.
He peed on my rug!
He peed on the dude's rug.
Do your worst.
Final report of the commercial starship Nostromo.
Roads? Where we're going, we don't need roads.
Welcome to your feature presentation. I am your host, Heath Fall. Today we are talking about movies coming out this weekend, and we have a special interview with the Cosmere Junkie. That's going to be pretty fun. With me today is Andrew McKay.
Hello, Heath. I'm so excited for our talk with Cosmere Junkie. But first, we got some movies to talk about.
Yeah.
What's the first one coming up?
So we got two movies coming out this weekend. We've got Horizon and A Quiet Place.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start with Horizon here.
Yeah, Horizon, an American saga. We've got Kevin Costner and Jenna Malone, Giovanni Ribisi, which is very exciting. But this is the chronicles of a multifaceted 15-year span of pre- and post-Civil War expansion and the settlement of the American West. Good old classic Western with Kevin Costner. Don't know if you can go wrong with that.
Yeah, I was going to say, it feels like a good classic Western, and I believe this is like part one, they're calling it. So,
Yes.
But then
Chapter
they say saga. So that kind of tells me that, like, is this a series? Is this, and this is the reason why there's not another season of Yellowstone. So for all those Yellowstone people.
Really?
Yeah. I think they said, I just saw an interview with him that this was delayed. So they had to, Yellowstone was delayed. And he was like, I made promises to these people who were making this movie. So we had to stick with that. It's like, way to go, Kev.
Very interesting. Wow.
Kev.
A man of his word.
Yeah. So yeah, that looks super fun. I feel like we don't get as many Westerns right now, so it's kind of refreshing, and it's like, not in a bad way, but it's not a Marvel movie. So that's kind of like
Right.
an action movie that will be, just a non-superhero movie, and that's refreshing too.
Yeah.
And then we've got A Quiet Place.
Yeah, A Quiet Place, day one. We've got... Oh, interesting. The synopsis for this on IMDb is plot under wraps. So we don't know.
That makes sense. I could see that. So this is the third Quiet Place movie. This is not directed by John Krasinski. So this is kind of like a different take. It looks really good, though, and
Yeah.
I'm very excited for it. And I will say this, too. If you like A Quiet Place and you want to go see this movie, I would highly recommend you go see it soon, because I think this movie is going to play a lot with sound. And this is not a movie to see when people are there just to, like, have a good time at the movies, which you want to have a good time.
Like any of the Quiet Place
Right.
projects.
Yeah, it's like you need, like, can you imagine how disruptive it would be if there's, like, silence because it's so tense and somebody's like, can you pass me the popcorn?
The worst.
Is there butter and salt on this? I don't understand it.
They skipped me. Yeah, so the director is Michael Sarnowski. He's done Pig and Fight Night Legacy, which was a TV series. He directed 3 episodes of that. But John Krasinski was a writer on the show, so that's good at least.
Yeah, which I think he was just doing
continuity.
That's why he wasn't involved in this, but
Yeah.
cool. All right, well, let's just get right to our interview. So we interviewed a really cool guy named Gary, and he does multifaceted kind of social media, YouTube kind of things. He's called the Cosmere Junkie, and the Cosmere is basically the name for Brandon Sanderson's work. It's all of his books, and we talked about some of his books when we talked about our adaptions episode, and so we just thought it'd be cool to have this guy on who has, like, just a huge knowledge of Sanderson and a love of his works. And yeah, we just have an interview with him, and we're just gonna see what he wants to see made movies, and just talk some Sanderson books and some Cosmere, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we get into some things that we would want or need as a fan of the Cosmere, with if they were ever to be adapted. And I think listen to the interview because sounds like we're getting something from Brandon Sanderson.
Tease, a
that's
great
really
tease,
exciting.
Andrew. Awesome. All right, well, here is our interview with Gary Honda, the Cosmere Junkie. Well, we have a guest today we're really excited to talk to, the Cosmere Junkie himself. Some people refer to him as an airsick lowlander, but we don't. This is Gary Honda. Hello, Gary.
Too much air. Yes, I'm sick on it. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to talk about Cosmere and Brandon Sanderson. Whatever you guys want to get into, I'm happy to go on all the tangents.
Sweet. Yeah, we are all about it. So, yeah, I was going to ask, like, how do you describe kind of like what you do? Like, do you describe it as like, you know, I don't know. Yeah, use your words. What do you, how would you say what you do?
I haven't really had to explain it much to other people who are into the Cosmere. Usually it's like family or friends who like know nothing about it. And they're like, what do you do? It's like this book series that Brandon Sanderson writes. He writes epic series with tons of books, and they're all interconnected and weaving together. And I just make memes about them. I just try to pull the humor out of them and condense it down into a 5-10 second video and then release it for everyone's enjoyment. So that's essentially what I do. Yes.
Yeah, you do a great job. They're so funny.
Oh, I'm glad. There's some are better than others for sure. But yeah, it's been fun. It's been a really fun ride, especially like the last 3 months or so. It's really been just exploding, which has been really fun to see the community like all coming together.
And it's sweet. I was looking at I think you had some highlights of like top numbers you were hitting on like Instagram and stuff. And it's so funny, like when you click on that, how low the numbers are, but you're like excited about it. And it's like how far it's come. I don't know. It was just cool to see like these giant step ups that like followers that you've gained. I don't know. It's just cool to see how much that just takes off, you know? And I don't know about you, but I feel like a special kinship when someone says the word Cosmere. I'm just like,
Yes.
oh yeah. All right. Let's have a pint. Let's talk about this.
Friend for life.
Yeah, exactly. So I did want to ask, like, how did you get started with Sanderson? Like, what was your first like introduction?
Sure. Yeah. So it was actually in high school. I think I was 17 or 16, and my uncle recommended the book to me, The Way of Kings, and I fell in love with it. Got into it at the time. I think there was only 2 out of this at that time, and then I slowly just kept reading them as they came out. And by the 3rd one, I was like, I'm gonna look into some of the other books that he's written. And so I got into Mistborn, and it took me forever to realize there was a second era to Mistborn as well. And eventually I just became obsessed with it. It actually took me quite a long time to realize how deep it got. And so I know that's not quite conventional to start with The Way of Kings. I know a lot of people recommend starting with something smaller, but I loved it and it was great. And now my uncle, I think he's only read the Stormlight Archive once, and I don't think he's read any of the other books. So I've definitely surpassed his expectations.
Wow.
Oh, the Padawan has become the master.
Yes, I try to get him into it, but he's a busy man. So
that's so funny. So he suggested like one book, and
Yes.
you're like, "This is the best thing," and then you keep reading all, and he's just like, "No, I'm just gonna read the one book."
Yeah, I don't think he has the time or interest to read the rest of the series. So, which I think is interesting because I do think Stormlight is just like, first of all, by itself, it's great, and with each reread, it gets better. But once you start adding in all the elements of the other books, it just becomes better and better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was gonna say we don't want to talk about my experience too much, but man, this year I feel like I'm diving a lot deeper personally. So I started with reading The Wheel of Time, and then this guy came in and was like, "Hey, sorry to tell you this, but the author has perished." And I'm like, that was my introduction to that. Robert Jordan had died, which that was a tough moment. I was like, oh no. And so he's like, "My name's Brandon Sanderson. I'm going to finish The Wheel of Time." So I finished that way. And then I also read Way of Kings first. And so I don't know, I loved it. And then I'm just going through Mistborn right now. So this is fresh. Like, just finished the first Wax and Wayne book. What is that? Hero? No.
The Alloy of Law.
Yeah.
Alloy of Law.
Yeah.
So I just finished that today. So this is,
Wow.
yeah, Mistborn is very fresh for me.
That series is so good.
Yeah.
But you finished Hero of Ages 2 days ago or
I
something.
did.
Right?
Yeah. So Gary, what you don't know is I have a 3-week-old in my
wow,
house.
congratulations.
So my move is I'll put one earbud in, rocking the baby all hours of the night, and listen to Mistborn. So that's how I can look through all these audiobooks.
I've been there.
Yeah.
I've been there when you got a newborn and you need something to do. Yeah. Sanderson's a great option.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. What I've really enjoyed is the Year of Sanderson, just like all those mini books, because my wife is not a fantasy reader, but she loves Tress. I got to read Tress, and it was like, I don't know, it's cool because there seems to be like a lot of connections, like, oh, maybe you don't want to read the Cosmere, but read this one or read this series. Even like the Wax and Wayne era, it's like they're pretty short, pretty reasonable, like, compared to like Way of Kings, if that daunts you,
Sure.
But yeah, so do you have like a favorite like book, or do you have like a favorite era? Like, are you more of a Mistborn or more of a archive, or?
Yeah, no, the flagship of the Cosmere is the Stormlight Archive, according to Brandon, and yeah, I gotta stick with him on that. And it was my first, right? Like, it's what got me into it, so I feel like I have a special connection to that series, for sure.
Yeah. And I just, man, especially like, I don't want to spoil too much stuff, but when in Sunlit Man, as I just finished last month, when someone says the name Kaladin, because he thinks, I was just like,
spoilers.
Everyone's
a lot of implications there. It's
yeah,
so good.
Yeah.
And
My introduction was
I don't care, Andrew. This isn't your interview.
And to the listeners, to the listeners and the viewers, I am here. I am still on the podcast. I had like 2 weeks of yard work to do at my mom's house like 2 summers ago, and so I just found the biggest audiobook that was available now on my library app, and it was The Way of Kings. And I was like, oh, I've heard some friends talk about this. There's whatever. It was like 50 hours, something like that. And I remember I listened to it for that like week and a half or however long it took. And I think I gave it like a 3 out of 5 stars. I was like, I don't know. That wasn't like the coolest thing I've ever seen or ever heard of. And I took like a 4-month hiatus. And I just started talking to people. Like, you kind of find Cosmere people around in your life, and people kept amping it up to me and like kept reminding me how cool The Way of Kings was. And I was like, oh yeah, you're right. That was amazing. So when I read Words of Radiance, that's when it like really clicked for me. I started the second one and I was like, okay, I think this is the coolest thing that's ever happened to me.
Yeah.
Few thoughts on just to build off of that. A lot of people do think that Words of Radiance is the best. I think it's his #1 rated book on Goodreads. It might have been surpassed by Tress of the Emerald Sea recently, but it either is or it was his.
It sure was.
Best rated book. But as far as like, you picked it because of how long it is, like, if we can just talk about that for a second, because I know that's been a hindrance and a major prop for a lot of people, especially audiobook readers, because so many people are like, I only have 1 credit. What am I going to use it on? I want the most bang for my buck. So they go to the longest book and they listen to The Way of Kings, and that's a plus for them. But then I know so many other people have actually reached out to me saying, I want to read it, but I have this goal to read this many books this year, and The Way of Kings will just ruin my goal. And I'm like, count it as 3, man. It's worth it. It's worth it.
So to answer your question, I'm sorry. On Goodreads, Tress is a 4.4 as of right now, and Words of Radiance is a 4.76 still. And it still has triple the amount of reviews on Goodreads, 360,000, and Tress has about 100,000.
That's an insane rating. Insane.
Oh,
rating.
man.
I also have a boon. I loved it.
After one of the best lines.
I was going to say, you just made a little reel that was cracking me up with the monkey from the Planet of the Apes.
Planet of the Apes, yeah.
Oh no! It's like, I also have a boon. Oh no! Man,
yeah. It was one of the cringiest lines in the book, but it was it preceded one of the best lines in the book with "Honor is dead, but I'll see what I can do." So,
this I was
highs and
gonna
some low lows.
I was gonna say this is a question I was gonna ask later, but I'll just ask it now. So, like, what's your like favorite like gut wrench moment like that? Like, what's the one that's like shook you the most, or the most that's like punch in the stomach?
Wow. Like a punch in the gut. Like no, I don't want to give it away any spoilers, but the end of Rhythm of War, I don't know how anyone can't come back to that climactic moment with a certain character's death. That's got to be up there for sure. It's probably the worst.
Gosh, yeah. Andrew,
what about you? What sticks out? I'm putting this right on you. What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, honestly, I feel like I'm very much stuck in what I'm reading right now. So I just had the ending of the Alloy of Metal. And so with like the character that shows up again at the end with some eyes that are a little weird.
Oh.
And I was like, that was like I was working and I was like, no, what is going on? Which, man, yeah, we could talk forever. But man,
Shadows of Self, the book you're going into, I think also has quite the gut wrenching moment. Now that you've got me thinking Wax and Wayne, the end of that book is a really, really tough one to swallow as well.
And I will say this too to people who haven't read Mistborn. I think Andrew's a little bit of your thing about maybe wrong book, wrong time, or maybe you just needed to get used to it. The Final Empire I read when I was taking care of my first child who was a newborn, and I just couldn't quite sink in. And I think it was like, this isn't Stormlight. I just don't have as much attachment. And then I did a reread, and I'm like, okay, now I'm into it. But finishing that first saga of Mistborn, and then you start the Wax and Wayne stuff, it's like you have set up all of the mythology, and it's so cool going into that era with like God, the gods of these people, the religions of these people, because you met those I don't know. It's just, I don't know if you guys know this, but Sanderson is actually pretty good. He's actually a pretty good writer. Like
his foreshadowing is incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got, in the first book of Mistborn, there's a epilogue is what they're called, that foreshadows events that are going to be happening in Mistborn Era 3. And when you think about how far back he wrote the first book, and he hasn't even written Era 3 yet, that's just mind-boggling to me that he plans that far ahead.
Yeah. Those like little interludes or epilogues between like chapter breaks and little sections, he's, I think, the only author that I pay attention to those. Like, or even especially the text, like from the books in universe, like The Way of Kings, when they put like the scripture from it right up in the front there, I read that like 3 times because I know like Brandon would not put this here if it wasn't important. And like, or even like title names, the names of chapters. I'm like, remember this for like 4 chapters at least.
Yeah. Like, just one off the top of my head is the one that talks about True Glory. There's a chapter called True Glory, and it's in book 2, Words of Radiance, but the epilogue was in, epilogue is the wrong word, epigraph from book 1. It talks about how there will be 2 men coming out of the ground in true glory and holding a heart. And then not small spoilers for the second book, but Words of Radiance, it's Shallan and Kaladin, the chapter's True Glory, and they come out of the chasms with a chasm fiend's heart, and you're like, well, that's so
wow.
Yeah.
Well, I want to dive right into it, as we are a movie podcast and we're tempted to make a book podcast. I asked you to kind of bring like just like your top 5 books that you want to see maybe made into movies. So do you have a little list for us?
I do. Well, should we start at the bottom? Number 5?
Yeah, let's do it.
So number 5, I think I'd go with Elantris. I can see that being a controversial choice, I think, but I think you could do it low budget, especially with the horror aspects. It's basically a zombie book, right? And so I think it wouldn't be a bad place to start, honestly. I know a lot of people want to start with Mistborn Era 1, but I think Elantris could be very affordable. It wouldn't need crazy visual effects. And I think Sanderson has matured as a storyteller enough that he could kind of sharpen up some of the character, their storylines, the character arcs. But I also think that it would also just be a beautiful story to tell. Like, it's very gripping, very compelling. And I think a lot of people would get pulled into the Cosmere because of it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that's an amazing start for the Cosmere in cinema, like in movie format, because it's not like daunting. Like, how are we gonna convey to the viewer how all these allomancy abilities are happening and when they're being used? Like, Elantris is really, really good, and the magic is pretty straightforward. Like, what you see happening in the air with the drawing and stuff is like, you just make it glow, you know? So cool. I love that.
Yeah. I unfortunately have not read this book.
Boo. That's okay. You're working your way through it.
I'm
trying.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. So, like, what is it about that book then that would be would you want that to be the first movie they made from Sanderson?
This is my list from 5 to number 1. So
okay.
I would probably not pick it for my first. Honestly, I do think that ideally, like, what Sanderson is doing is correct with starting with Mistborn, just because it has the wider audience that could convert into people going to the theaters. There's the creative side of why I might pick a certain book. And then there's also all these other financial and which one has the bigger audience and whatnot. But as far as Elantris, I think my main choices would be kind of what we said earlier, is wouldn't be too expensive. There's not a bunch of locations. Most of the book is all in one city. And so you can really focus on getting probably good actors, getting good visual effects for when the magic starts to return. It's a book that is about the loss of the magic, and it's coming back to this world. So you don't have magic start to finish. You can really kind of load it up on the back half, and it's just a good story, and it's got good character arcs. The writing in the book, I know Sanderson gets a lot of flack because it was his first novel that he published, but I honestly don't think it's as bad as a lot of people say. So
no,
yeah. So that would be my fifth one. Do you want me to move to number 4?
Yeah. Let's hear your 4.
Okay. So 4th, I would probably say Mistborn Era 2, which you've read the first book now, so you can chime in on this one. But I just love Mistborn Era 2. I love the twist from Mistborn Era 1 that, yes, you've got the magic system, but Sanderson's not going to bore you with the same magic system. He flips it on its head. You get Twinborn. You get to talk about the other 8 metals that weren't really talked about too much in the first era, and it's just another fun movie. And it wouldn't be crazy. I don't think it'd be crazy expensive because Allomancy, a lot of it isn't very. I mean, there's visual, but like a lot of the powers aren't visual. When you have like emotional and whatnot, and a lot of the things like steel pushing and pulling, like that's not going to be too crazy to have on the screen. And then it's a Western, right? And Westerns aren't historically like too expensive either. I don't think. I think it would be just a really fun time. You could do it as a show. You could do it as a movie. I'd love to see Wax in real life. I'd love to see Hugh Jackman play Wax in particular. I think that'd be just epic. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, obviously I am so hyped on Mistborn right now because that's what I'm doing. But
yeah.
I was thinking about that today, that I don't think you could really start in a wrong era, like 1 or 2. Like, I think if you love one, you'll read the other one. And I'm like, it'd be kind of fun to start with a middle era and then learn about the mythology and then go back and read that and vice versa. Like, I think you're right, especially with the length of books. If someone is daunted, I think the Wax and Wayne era would be such a great way, movie-wise, just to jump in. Like visually, I think book-wise, The Final Empire kind of describes some of the magic a little more straightforward. So it's maybe a little confusing if you haven't read that. But then movie-wise, it's just visualized. Like, oh, he's doing that. So you wouldn't have to explain it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah. Well, that's it.
Andrew.
I'm excited. I want you to do number 3. Like, I want to see what these top 3 are, man.
I will say one thing about Mistborn Era 2, just for any listeners who haven't read the books, based off of what Heath said. I think Mistborn Era 2 is a fine place to start, as long as you end with book 3 in Mistborn Era 2. The 4th book is The Lost Metal. And The Lost Metal is kind of where Sanderson, he talks about his journey as an author and how all of his editors, all of the publishers were telling him to kind of keep it light on the interconnectivity of the Cosmere because they don't want to scare off readers, right? Readers coming in and they're like, oh, do I have to read everything in order to get this next book? And so they really pushed him against it. And he finally decided, you know what, this is what I'm known for. This is what I love. This is what I enjoy. So it was right around The Lost Metal where he said, my gloves are coming off and I'm going to just basically go crazy, go nuts with it. So The Lost Metal has, you're going to really enjoy it when you get there. There's so much crossover with other series that just kind of blow your mind. And so for new readers, go ahead, read books 1, 2, and 3. I would hold off on book 4 until you read at least Mistborn and The Way of Kings and maybe a couple of other books here and there.
Cannot wait.
yeah, you're in for a treat. And those books are quick. You can get through those real quick.
That's very true.
My third one might come as a surprise is Yumi and the Nightmare Painter.
Cool.
Yeah, that one was, I think it's Brandon's, and it was my favorite secret project out of the 4. It's just, I really haven't read any romance books. It was really my first romance book I read, but I think it wasn't, like, it was very well done, felt very realistic, and I know some people give Sanderson a hard time for his romance, but I think that like he focuses on the characters and it was so well done. But I also think if adapted, whether it's adapted into live action or animated, I think it would really just jump off the screen. Like the whole thing's about an artist who does these beautiful paintings, and it's got these inky, shadowy creatures that like are stalking the city on one side of the story, and on the other side it's like a old medieval time with like all these rules and restrictions, but there are like fairies everywhere, kind of like Spren. I think it would be visually great, and I think the story would be awesome as well.
Yeah, just to see the Heian lights, like through like when I was reading that one, I could not stop thinking about that like Blade Runner, like noir Tokyo, like aesthetic where it's like dark, shadowy city. The only lights are like these neon lights just cutting through, and I love that so much. It's so cool.
I was about to say Blade Runner. That's exactly what I think of when I see that. Have you read The Secret Project, Heath?
No.
No, that's okay.
I was going to say I'm trying so hard to catch up right now. So
Did you read Tress? Because you said your wife.
Yes.
Your wife read Tress. Okay.
I read Tress, Sunlit Man, Frugal Wizard's Guide, and Yumi.
Oh, it's the only one left then.
Yeah.
Great.
So I'm so close, but I was like, I'm excited. I'm excited for that too. So, I was gonna say something else, but it might be one of your numbers. So let's keep going down your list, and then we'll continue. But
yeah. No, so Yumi's great. I really love that, and I love the characters. Number 2, I had Mistborn Era 1, which is where Sanderson wants to start. I think it's really good as well. Like medieval isn't something that should be too daunting from a budget perspective. But also, like, have you guys read Sanderson's essay Outside that he read last year? That he wrote last year? So Did you guys hear about that article? The Wired article. There's an author who just kind of bashed Sanderson. He went and visited him, stayed in his home, and then he wrote, all these negative things about him. And Sanderson kind of did his own piece, kind of explaining his side of things, and it's called Outside. And it's a beautiful essay, super short read. But he talks about how all of us at sometimes in our lives were on the outside of things. And he talked about an experience he had when he was with a group of friends, and it was a church group. And then they decided to go out and go do something together. And there were only 5 seats, but there were 6 boys, and he got left on the curb. While all his friends went, and he got left outside. And he used this motif, and it was just really beautiful story. But then he compared it to his inspiration for writing Vin, and how Vin in Mistborn is on the outside of this group, and they're welcoming her in, and they're making a place for her, but she has been hurt and doesn't trust, right? She doesn't want to open herself up because she's got Reen, her brother, telling her that everyone's going to hurt her and everyone's going to betray her. And she learns to open herself up and to choose to trust and choose to love. One of the best messages, I think, in the whole Cosmere, of choosing to be optimistic and choosing to make yourself vulnerable, because it's better to love than to close yourself off. So I think that whole storyline is just incredible. But then just allomancy and feruchemy and hemalurgy, like all of it is just so cool to think about. And I think that would come across so cool on screen. I want to see Inquisitors, man. I want to see the spikes in the eyes.
That's like one of the scariest. Go ahead.
Yeah. I was going to say, I just think about feruchemy all the time. I'm like, man, if I could just sit right here and I would just be sick right here because I'm just sitting down, and I'll save that up. And then when I am sick, get rid of my sickness. Like, I don't know.
So cool.
It's like, I would use that. A drop of a hat. I'd use feruchemy.
Yeah, I'd love to be a full feruchemist.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that, like, off of your, what you were saying about Vin, and that being adapted could be a huge draw for non-readers, just to get a story like that where a very strong, well-written female protagonist who struggles with that, like being on the outside, who was betrayed and hurt by all the people that were supposed to take care of her. Like, I think a lot of people will probably resonate with her relationship with her parents. Hopefully they won't resonate with all the details of how that turned out. But, not feeling safe or wanted in your home as a child. I think there's a huge amount of people that would resonate with that. And then to find a father figure like Kelsier, and what ensues after that of, like, finally I can learn and trust and love, and what a great story, man.
And I feel like that's so, Sanderson does so well of just like that, just pushing through, like fighting adversity, and man, like Marsh's journey, I'm trying not to spoil too much, but just like where Marsh stops, and he was like, and that beats him up because he was so close, but he lost hope, he lost faith, and I don't know, it's just like he does that so well. And I was thinking about this earlier. I'm like, man, if Tolkien coined the phrase eucatastrophe, and like if he invented that, I think Sanderson has perfected that idea of like we're done, nope, here it comes, just like but it's not, I don't know, a lot of times he does the thing where it's not some magical outside force coming in, it's just like the resolve, and it's got to be us. I'm the person who's here, so it's my responsibility, and I think just in especially Mistborn, I think really shows that.
Marsh is an incredible character. Yeah, I hope I won't get into spoilers, but I hope he's continues to be an amazing character. So
every time Marsh shows up in any form that he shows up, I'm just like, what?
Yeah.
Shocks me every time.
And he's increasingly a badass. He's so cool.
Yep.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I love the irony with him and Kelsier. And just not to get into spoilers, I'll present this in a way that's not spoilery for people who haven't read the books, but of their nicknames, and you look at what they become known for, but then like what happened to them throughout the Mistborn series is completely opposite. Like they should really have each other's nicknames when you think about it, with Marsh being called the Survivor and Kelsey or maybe being called Death. But it's a really cool setup that Sanderson has with those two.
And yeah, I never thought about the nickname switch. It's so right there. That's wow, that's really sweet. All right, I'm ready. Let's hear your number one.
Number one, Stormlight Archive. And I looked at the text, your text, when you asked me to make a list. You're like, which 5 books? And I'm like, we're going to do series. Because otherwise it would just be Stormlight 1, Stormlight 2, Stormlight 3, Stormlight, because that's just so incredible. I love this series so deep. It's so profound. There's so many great messages in them, and also great comedy as well. But the insight into mental health, everyone I talk to about it say it's the most accurate representation of mental health that they've ever seen in books. It's wide sweeping. The world building is huge. It's epic. So many different characters. It could not be done in a movie. No movie could do it justice unless you split the movie into 6, like the book into 6 movies and call them episodes. But yeah, I'd love to see a huge budget for a TV show and Sanderson just at the helm of it.
I couldn't agree more about the TV show aspect. Of all of the Sanderson works that I want to be a TV show, it is the Stormlight Archive.
Yeah, with a great budget, it would knock it out of the park. We just need to get more fans. We need to build up the community more so that they can justify millions of dollars an episode.
Oh yeah.
I think it's coming. Honestly, I hope it comes sooner rather than later. But I do think I just feel like this is going to be I think Sanderson will be talked about at some point, like a George Lucas, like a Tolkien, like a creator of a work that's so vast that's gonna last. Like that's, I mean, and also what a writer that just like works like in the best way. Like he just writes and he is serious about it and he cares about it. Like his diligence is just amazing to me. Like every time I'm like still waiting on the Winds of Winter there, George, you know. And it's like,
George, don't get me started on Mr. Martin.
But man, just such a cool guy and that's such a cool, like, yeah, I think the same thing for us. We talked about the Stormlight, and I say movie because that's my dream. I love movies and I want that. But what I mean by movies is I would love each book to be 3 movies. You're right. Sure. You know, and it's like I think TV is probably the better way to go, or how they'll have to go, I guess, to get it, you know, there.
So big.
I thought maybe they could, and I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts about this. I wonder if they could, because like the way they did the Harry Potter books is they were like, just focus on Harry. Let's cut out everything else that's not about Harry Potter. And I'm like, I wonder if you could do the Stormlight Archive with not like cutting stuff out, but just like cutting out the bouncing back in time, like a lot of the backstory for like when he's a kid, maybe Shallan's story, you know, which I don't want to lose that, but I'm like, maybe that's the way to make it one movie. But yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
I'd be heartbroken if we cut out some of those backstories. Yeah, it defines their actions so much. When you look at Kaladin's relationship with his father, that is so pivotal to everything that he does when he's deciding whether or not to save or to fight. Yeah, I think that's super important. And you think about like Dalinar's backstory, right? Like how can you take apart what a terrible person he was? Because one of the best moments in the whole series is you cannot have my pain. And if you don't know where he came from, how is that going to hit the same? You know, I think But I do think it would be interesting, like maybe instead of a movie like just going through all the books and just focusing on Kaladin's, like maybe what you were suggesting, and every book is just about Kaladin. Maybe like have like split it into 3 movies, right? And have one from Kaladin's perspective, Dalinar's and Shallan's. Or maybe the first 3 movies be about Kaladin's perspective. But at that point, if you go that route, you think about it, 2 hours per movie, and that's going to put you at 6 hours for the first book, The Way of Kings. You're probably looking at 6 1-hour episodes for a series if you were to do 3 separate movies, which I think I'd be okay with that. If it'd just be hard to find a good stopping point for each movie if you did split it into 3 movies.
Mm-hmm.
I'm muting my mic because there's a screaming child, but my wife's on it. So
no worries.
Good. Yeah, I think it's tough because I want it to be. It's like my dreams conflict with what's actually going to happen, and I'm like, I would totally
reality
be into like a 6-hour high budget Stormlight movie. You know what I mean? So it's just like, but that's never been done. Then it'll never be done. So
that's. I was just talking with some people about what's a movie that you wish was longer, and so we were going through like a bunch of movies that we wish we had more time on, and I literally said Zack Snyder's Justice League cut, which is already like 5 hours. I was like, it finished, and I was like, more please. Give me.
Yes.
That's I feel that way and more about Brandon Sanderson. Like you finish a 1,300-page book and you go, what about more? How about some more?
So interestingly enough, I think so. We've got book 5, Wind and Truth, is coming out in December, and Sanderson said that the word count he was at was 525,000. I think was the ballpark he was at. But when they announced the final draft, it's going to be 493,000 or something like that. So not just under 500,000 words, right? And they went to the printer and they had to fight for every page essentially to get that thick because these books are so big. So it sounds like they had to cut some out just because of the restrictions of how big the printer could actually make the physical book. Mm-hmm. So to your point, when you're like, just have some more, I think they're really trying because apparently they squeezed in a few more pages than from the last book, but like they're doing everything they can to get as much story to us as possible. And now I want the extra 25,000 words released as well.
Yeah, extended cut, extended
yes.
edition.
Yes.
I was going to say, I don't know if he's mentioned that. I wonder if he would ever do like maybe the audiobook or the Kindle version is extended, because it wouldn't.
I mean, he's doing Way of Kings Prime. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
It was like kind of his first draft of Way of Kings. So like I've never seen an author be open like that before. I'm like, hey, this was the original story. You can buy it if you want. Like
it's free on YouTube.
Oh, it's free?
Yeah.
So that's amazing.
You can buy a physical copy, but you can just get on his YouTube and listen to it if you want.
Yeah. That's just so cool. Like for someone who makes so much content and for the personality that I like perceive him to have, it makes sense. You go, oh, of course you're just giving a whole book away for free on YouTube. But it's just so cool.
Yeah. I know he does want to be careful releasing the pre-versions because he's like, I'm a better author now, and those aren't as good. But that one in particular, I know he did rework significantly. So the story is vastly different. I think Shallan gets married to Taravangian in the first book. So it's like big changes, but it's still interesting to see where he started, right?
Yeah.
That's hilarious. When you said that, I was like, wait, how did... what is that story?
That happening makes me think of Elantris.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm like,
he likes his arranged marriages, doesn't he? But it's also just the time period in the Cosmere. It's early in the Cosmere, so there's a lot of that kind of stuff.
I was going to say,
Shallan,
oh, go ahead.
I was going to say Shallan did get an arranged marriage, even still.
I want to be in my own chosen arranged marriage.
Yes.
Not the arranged marriage you choose, but the one that you serve. All right. So, yeah, we'll just wrap it up. I had just a kind of final question for you. So,
Yeah.
In your opinion, Gary, like what needs to happen to make a Sanderson movie? Like what are some things that you need or you think like need to happen for it to be like just a good project, good movie?
So just for it to be good or for like it to be successful?
Ooh, let's do both. Let's do
Okay.
both. Like, what do you think?
And before I jump into that, one little piece of trivia. I don't know if you guys know, but Sanderson's talked about cameoing in all of his movies and films. Have you guys heard about this?
No.
Do a Stan Lee approach, but his version of the Stan Lee cameo is that he will die a gruesome death as an extra in the background. And so every show he wants to be in, he just wants to get murdered viciously.
Oh, that's so funny.
It'll be fun to see that happen. I can't wait for that part. We'll just have once all the books are made, you'll just watch YouTube videos of Sanderson getting killed over and over again.
Yeah, death compilations. That's so great.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
But to be successful, we definitely we talk about how the audience is big enough that it's impossible for a certain author to fail. I think that's true in a couple of circumstances, and I honestly don't think Sanderson is there yet. You've got examples like J.K. Rowling with the Harry Potter books. Those were massive hits that didn't matter basically what kind of audience you attracted. As long as you got the book audience to go, it was going to make a ton of money. I think maybe like the Twilight series might also have been in that ballpark. I don't think we're there yet, but I know his fan base is growing all the time. There's so many people, and Cosmere fans, I think, are some of the most zealous fans out there. Everyone I know is saying that they're trying to convert their friends' family into loving this property. So I think hopefully we can get there. But right now, I think if an adaptation, it's not going to be enough to just appeal to book fans. I think they do need to find a way to appeal to a wider audience, which in turn will grow the fandom as well. How they do that, I'm not entirely certain, because I think the books are perfect the way they are. But I understand there's a transformation that needs to happen when you're adapting. That it can't just be page for page, line for line. It doesn't work that way. And then what was the other question? That was how it would be successful, or what do I need for a good adaptation?
Yeah,
I think is what you said. Okay. I know a lot of people, it goes back to what I just said. A lot of people want that perfect adaptation. I am perfectly fine if I don't get every scene in the book. I am okay with them making changes to help the narrative flow better on screen. I just really want the journey of the characters to be the same. I really want the milestones that they hit, the core parts of their character. I don't want to change. I want Shallan to struggle with imposter syndrome in the first book. I want her to, in her story, have the same struggles with her family back home. I want Kaladin to struggle with his father, and if you don't take out his little brother, he's not going to be the same character. All those touch points need to be the same. But if you change details about what happened on Bridge 4, or some of the characters, I'm fine with that. I think as long as you keep the soul of the character arcs the same, I'll be happy.
Yeah, I think so. It's just you need the heart, you need those characters to be themselves. I think a big adaptation thing is they'll combine some characters, they'll combine some storylines. But yeah, I think you're right. It's just if they destroy the characters, that's the fail. Yeah. But yeah, there's hope. So the Mistborn, I think, is the one they're talking about the most right now. And I think we will get this. And I also feel, I would love it if it's next year, but I also think it's good they're waiting, because right now we're in kind of a weird era of, if a book is being made into a movie, there's so many fans that are just they're going to ruin it. because that's what they're doing to a lot of stuff right now. So it's just kind of like, not that I want them to wait, but like I feel like let's wait until it's done right. I'd rather wait more, but it's gonna be.
And Hollywood is kind of struggling right now. I think is not a secret. You have a couple of hits here and there, but a lot of movies are losing money. But you know, with Mistborn, before the writer's strike that happened this year, that before the writer's strike, Sanderson even said that he saw people on stage in miscloaks reading his lines. Like they got that far before the project got closed. So it'll happen. It's just a matter of when and can he get the power that he wants, the influence he wants over the story.
Yeah. I think that's super important. That's something that I saw slip away. Many of us saw slip away out of George Martin's hands was HBO's Game of Thrones. And it's like, well, you haven't given like the content, so like you haven't written those books, so we're just going to take liberties. We're just going to go the direction we want to go. And it just went there really bad. So, yeah, full control
with him. Yeah, I saw interviews with him where he said the same thing that Sanderson said, where he's like, luckily he'd done enough in his past, like previous experiences that he was comfortable enough financially. He's like, I can say the words that Hollywood hates the most, and that is no. I can tell them no.
Yeah.
Where there's a lot of authors who bring their books to get adapted, and they'll say yes to anything because they need the money just to put food on the table. And Sanderson has said that he's at the same place. He's like, I have the power to say no, and I will say no until I'm happy with what we're going to do. So in Sanderson, we trust. His control, I think, will be a firm hand on the reins and hopefully lead to something epic.
Yeah. Are we going to see the first fully funded GoFundMe movie?
He actually addressed that. He did address that. I think someone asked him, and he said that he wouldn't do that mainly because he's like, I'm a book person and I know how to make books and I can do that and get it to you. He's like, I've never made a movie before. He's like, I can try to find the best people, but he's like, I cannot guarantee the quality on those kind of things. He's like, he needs people who have that experience, and they're in Hollywood. So
yeah,
but that would have been awesome, right? And who knows? But I feel like these are going to cost hundreds of millions of dollars, so he'd really need the fandom to pony up.
Right?
They're going to make that.
Oh man, yeah,
I'm in. He's got my dollar.
Yeah. I'll give him. I'll throw a few bucks his way.
Yeah, definitely. Man. Well, sweet. Well, thanks so much for being on, Gary. This was super fun, just like chatting with you, and yeah, you'll be our our Sanderson expert that we'll call up if that's cool. Yeah.
Resident Sanderson expert.
Yeah. My pleasure.
Oh yeah. So like, where can people find you? Like, what's the main thing that you want to like point them to as like to just like enjoy your works and stuff?
Sure. Yeah. Cosmere Junkie. It's on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. We'll see if TikTok's around in a year. But yeah, those are the three main places I post. And it's usually a lot of the same. I can do a little bit more variety of content on Instagram. That's kind of where the biggest focus is. So yeah, check it out.
Sweet. Yeah, we'll link you in the show notes. But yeah, just thanks for being on, man. Super fun.
It was fun. It was so fun. Thank you.
Sweet. Thank you much, man.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening. We love talking to Gary so much. It's just a really fun time. You can find him, as we mentioned, Cosmere Junkie on YouTube, Instagram, and as always, you can find our podcast wherever you get podcasts. Thank you for listening. Thank you for commenting, sharing, engaging with us on Instagram. It's so fun. You can find our full video interview and show every week on YouTube as well. We'll see you next week. Go see a movie.